folks. I have another potentially interesting topic, and so I'm going to stumble and edit my way through another hypothesis for you. If you like this video, please go back and watch from the beginning of the series for more context and the full argument. I'd like to offer my interpretation of the symbolism of Baldur's death in the Norse myth, and I think it's much more relevant to today than one might guess. I think it's a story that's been told in many different ways, but this version has some unique and interesting bits. The story sheds light on what's going on in the world now, in general, and how to sort this mess out that we're in, because it's all related. This is the wonder of paganism, because it's very relevant to today. So the thesis of the page is that Baldur's strange death symbolises the fall of man and the beginning of the Kali Yuga. The etymology I favour for his name is Baltag, which is Lord of the Day, which is Yang. It's also Baldur, as bold, which is outstanding and apparent, is Yang. It's the same thing, it's day. Yin is night, and she's shy and hidden and modest. I think the word bold probably derives from Baldur. Baldur was a beautiful, shining god, loved by everyone, but he died leaving much sadness behind. He is fated to return after Ragnarok, however, so the light may return. He was killed by mistletoe, one of the very few parasitic plants in Europe, and by a blind god, his brother Hodder. The symbolism of the parasite blind god is fascinating to me. I think this story is telling us quite clearly what it represents. Ideology is a blind god, and it is a mind parasite. Also, the concept of chance and randomness, it's also a blind god, conceptually. Natural selection and quantum mechanics rely on the hypothesis that randomness could be God, i.e. the prime creative force, and it's part of the ideology of atheism. And ideology is kind of the focus of this bit in a way. So, an example ideology is, God didn't create you, your ancestors were monkeys, the universe happened by random chance. And so this means that you can do whatever stuff you like. There's no God to judge you, morality is just an illusion. And then you die, and you're gone forever, and you're not coming back. So you can totally get away with it. And that's, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. It's the Crowleyan kind of creed, isn't it? So you can see how people going from being brought up to be good and listen to God, to believing in harmful ideologies like this, would quickly cause the fall of mankind. And so to restore mankind, the only solution can be to restore our right mind in ourselves, and collectively, and abandon ideologies. So Baldur's death refers to the loss of the yang mind of reason to the yin mind of ideology, because these are opposites. This was the true fall of man. Baldur's death symbolises the time when the light of day went out of the people, and they fell from grace into night. It was the end of the age of heroes. We've all heard about that concept, I think. When people stopped growing up, it's the beginning of the Peter Pan age. Everyone remains as a child forever. A most dishonourable state to be in. So the death of Baldur, or Day, then represents the beginning of the Vedic Kali Yuga. It's the Iron Age of universal deceit and wickedness. It also represents Adam and Eve being cast from Eden. Likely it's also the tale of when Lucifer was cast out of heaven, or when the Gnostics Sophia fell from the Pleroma. It's all the same story represented in countless ways. All of these symbolise an internal fall in the level of human consciousness. People went from being moral to being immoral. And perhaps Ragnarok, or Armageddon, is the same thing as the Kali Yuga, i.e. we're in the midst of it. Baldur could not be restored to life in the story, and he had to remain in the underworld, and he can't emerge until after Ragnarok, when he and his brother Hodder would be reconciled, and they would rule the new earth together with Thor's sons. And if I'm right, the new earth would then be symbolising the dawning of the Bronze Age, in the Vedic scheme, the Dwapar Yuga. So this is the time when the light of truth begins to dawn again in the minds of men. And, could that be now? Wouldn't that be nice? The Garden of Eden story, it's a deeply layered, and I consider it a completely pagan story from well before Abrahamism. Adam and Eve were ejected from the Garden of Eden, or Odin, because they sinned against God. Well, what did they do specifically? They took the knowledge of good and evil for themselves. And I'd like to clarify that means morality. The knowledge of good and evil is morality. So I'd suggest that Adam and Eve were not originally ignorant of good and evil, as some say, but it's the opposite. I suggest the implication of the story is that they were completely aware of God's morality and his definitions of good and evil, but they chose to turn against it. If they were acting as beasts and the serpent opened their eyes to true morality, then why did one of their sons murder the other and then go on to introduce slavery to the world? And, why would God kick them out if they were moral? Okay, they were supposed to be beasts and now they're these moral, saintly kind of people. Why would he kick them out? Anyway, so every human being is born with a conscience, except for psychopaths, of course. They are a legitimate phenomenon of nature. And the conscience is God's voice of moral guidance. You have to deliberately ignore it to become immoral. It takes effort, perhaps not a huge amount, because the conscience is a quietish voice. But God didn't make them morally deficient. He wouldn't do that. For the serpent to show them that they were acting as beasts, it was the opposite, of course. The silver-tongued beast. Silver is in alchemy, it's the moon, it's yin, it's the goddess, it's Satan. So the silver tongue is, the deceitful tongue. What the serpent in the garden convinced them to do was to take on ideology instead of retaining their God-given morality. She pulled a classic confidence trick on the humans. You gain trust by lying, and then you steal all their stuff. It's easy to flatter the weak of mind with ideology like, oh, you're so handsome, beautiful, intelligent, and kind. You must be special. How about, you deserve more. You're being treated unfairly. I can make you rich. You're amazing. You should be queen. And those people over there, they're the cause of all of your problems. There's lots of ideologies out there, and most of them are crap. Anyway, in the Anunnaki, Dogon, Mayan, Greek, and many other myths, the gods brought technology to mankind. They brought mining, metallurgy, money, government, material science, warfare, makeup. Warfare and makeup are basically the same thing, literature, and so on. Imagine if Adam and Eve, i.e. indigenous people, living barefoot, simple, happy lives, were presented by the serpent/Anunnaki with a vision. Perhaps he came by with a portable TV, showed them a nice big castle, swimming pool, fancy clothes, and servants doing all of their work for them. And so the serpent shows them an episode of The Lives of the Rich and Famous, sort of thing, and says, I can help you get that stuff. You look so good in that Ferrari, don't you think? Come on, what do you say? And, why not? People actually believe things like, poor people like us are being oppressed by the rich, and so we should steal all their stuff and kill them. That would be moral, even though their conscience is telling them otherwise. So the egregore is an old occult concept. Ideology is a collection of beliefs about right and wrong. It's a moral framework, but it's not God's. And this is where Adam and Eve went wrong. They rejected God's morality, they ignored their conscience and took on a new immorality that suited their egos. And so Baldur, the light of day, died in the minds of men. And men created egregores instead, ideologies. Ideologies, as I discussed in Our Beliefs and Mind Parasites, they're exactly like warring gods. They fight over human minds to possess them. And they are false gods, of course. But they're very much God-like in the sense that they are immaterial, but they only live in the minds of men. They're immortal. They can live for millennia. They're superhuman because they can live simultaneously in the minds of millions of people. And they're controlling. They closely direct, even micromanage people's behaviours and emotions. So Adam and Eve, the people, became possessed by the demons of ideology. They became selfish and grasping, arrogant and aloof. They were rubbish parents, and their kids killed each other and went on to form the first mafia, enslaving each other in, ironically, slavish service to their egotistical beliefs, which are the true masters. Ideologies are egregores, autonomous, self-aware thought forms, or cultural memes, if you like, which blind people to the truth and utterly enslave them. Competing egregores like Islam and Christianity might battle each other for hundreds of years, using up the life energy and bodies of millions of followers, all in a parasite battle for more fleshy real estate to control and consume. Ideologies use people like meat puppets to enact their evil and jealous rage against humanity, while eating their life force, attention, and hollowing out their souls. But, you know, people are allowing themselves to be used as food by these creatures. They're just like demons. It's just like demonic possession. People have been domesticated by them, and we're being farmed like sheep by ideologies. You know, it's quite an idea to get your head around. So the world's being run by entities with the moral awareness of tapeworms, and, you know, we wonder why it's going so well. And beliefs and ideologies are, in effect, a spiritual predator of humanity. And there's a relatively famous quote from the Bible, from Ephesians, where it says, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places." The heavenly places being the mind and the will of people. It's against ideology. That's what we're fighting against. Listening to Odin and his children gives you knowledge, and that naturally replaces beliefs. Beliefs are entirely unnecessary. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that video. Thanks for listening, watching. Take care, guys. I'll catch you soon.